For better or worse, the Heisman Trophy has become a quarterback award, and sometimes more often than not, a quarterback award or award given to the best quarterback on the best team after the conference championships. And I think that stinks because how often is it that truly, genuinely, a quarterback, one position, is the overwhelming majority, the best player in college football? That's supposed to be the criteria of the Heisman Trophy, right? It's awarded to the most outstanding player in college football. And yet, very rarely, never, do offensive linemen win it, defensive linemen, linebackers. A defensive back has won it at time. Otherwise, it's quarterback, wide receiver, running back. So I've compiled a list. I think there are 5 players who are non-quarterbacks who can win the Heisman Trophy in 2024. And I feel like it goes without saying that all of these players, I'll probably mention it throughout all of these players need their team seasons to go well, right? Like nobody is going to win the Heisman Trophy going 3-9. There is not a player alive who is so great that their greatness is undeniable and that they would win the Heisman Trophy and their team not even make a bowl game. So if you hear somebody's name on here that you're like, well, wait a second, what? And that name might be off the charts for you or whatever, know that the only way that that team can have, or that player can have a really great season is by his team playing really great. So I'm glad we're on the same page there. But I think the top person on this list is Ollie Gordon, the running back from Oklahoma State. He rushed for 1,700 yards last year and 21 touchdowns. And there are people who believe Oklahoma State either is or are one of the front runners to win the Big 12. If Oklahoma State is in that conversation, it's likely because Ollie Gordon has carried them to that position. And so he was the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year last year. I think many would expect that to be the same in 2024. He averaged 6.1 yards per carry with an offensive line that was pretty good. If they could be really good in 2024, I think Ollie Gordon has as good a chance, if Oklahoma State is where people think they are, to win the Heisman Trophy as Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers. So I would put Ollie Gordon up there as 100%, in my mind, the best chance of a non-quarterback to win the Heisman Trophy. I would also I think you would be remiss to not put Travis Hunter in as at number 2. He had just over 700 yards receiving, had 5 tackles, plays both ways, was the number 1 player coming out of high school, went to Jackson State, then transferred with Deion to Colorado, and has been in the spotlight. And Deion Sanders is going to keep players, especially like Travis Hunter, in the spotlight. Many expect him to be a first-round NFL draft pick after the season. If he can have an impact both on offense and defense and add a little bit of special teams, if he can have that Charles Woodson type season, I think Travis Hunter has a really good chance to be in New York. Maybe not win the Heisman Trophy compared to other quarterbacks, but to have a chance to go to New York if Colorado can be better than 6-6. And I think that might be an issue for them, but I don't think you're going to see many people argue with the idea that Travis Hunter is head and shoulders above a lot of other players. The third on my list is maybe somebody you haven't heard of, and it's running back Omarion Hampton from North Carolina. I don't hear a ton of buzz for the Tar Heels going into 2024. But Omarion Hampton had 1,500 yards rushing last year on just under 6 yards per carry and had 15 touchdowns. And they are going to be without Drake May. So the offense changes. So Omarion Hampton, like when you get a new quarterback, especially one that is replacing a first-round NFL draft pick, there's going to be, one, a learning curve, but then two, a little bit of hesitancy, I think, especially the first couple of weeks of the season. And so we talked about it in the ACC video that I believe North Carolina's schedule is dreadful. And so when you look at like their non-conference is at Minnesota, Charlotte, North Carolina Central, James Madison. They don't play Clemson. They play Florida. They're at Florida State, and they're home for North Carolina State. There's a good chance, I think, that if Omarion Hampton stays healthy, that he rushes for 1,800 yards, 20 touchdowns, somewhere in that. If he can add some receiving out of the backfield as well, it'll really help his case. But if North Carolina can stay in that kind of ACC title hunt or in that conversation of in the like 15 through 20 range in the rankings where they're not necessarily knocking on the college football playoff door, but they have a good record because there's a very good chance that they start the season. What is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8-0. So there's a good chance that they get through October undefeated before going to Florida State. And if Omarion Hampton can have a really good season up to that point, I think that really helps him in that case for trying to make it to New York. Number 4 on my list, Donovan Edwards, the running back from Michigan. One, going to get a little extra lift from being on the EA Sports College Football 25 cover. Undeniable. Last year had just under 500 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns, but was splitting carries with Blake Corum. And not even splitting carries really as much as was the backup to Blake Corum. But similarly to North Carolina, Michigan is going to be replacing a first-round NFL draft pick quarterback with a new regime who I think are going to be somewhat skeptical of whoever wins that quarterback battle. And Donovan Edwards is going to get the lion's share of those carries. What he does with those are up to him. But to pretend as if one of, I think, 2, Colson Loveland being the other one, really kind of star offensive players from the returning national champion, to not put them on the list, I think would feel incomplete just because you know how college football works, right? Like, you know that the big brands are the ones who get the attention, and Michigan, no matter how 2024 goes, is going to get bulks of attention. They are still going to be good offensively, despite Jim Harbaugh leaving, despite losing a ton of talent, despite losing a great quarterback. They're going to be good. And they're going to find a way to be good offensively. And I think a big portion of that probably rests on the shoulders of Donovan Edwards. And then last but not least, the 5 non-quarterbacks who can win the Heisman Trophy. And it's wide receivers are always tough because you're kind of asking quarterbacks to also have really great stats. Like Devontae Smith wins the Heisman Trophy a few years ago, and his quarterback is also a Heisman Trophy finalist because Devontae Smith pumps up the numbers of Mac Jones. And so you're kind of relying on good quarterback play. And Travis Hunter is helped by that by Shedeur Sanders. I don't know what to expect from quarterback play for Luther Burden III, the wide receiver from Missouri, but had 1,200 yards last year, averaged 14.5 yards a carry, or yards per catch, and had 8 touchdowns after catching 83 passes as a sophomore. If he can improve to 100 catches for That's 17 more. If he can go to 100 catches for 1,450 yards and 13 touchdowns, I think it's real simple for Luther Burden to be in New York, or at least be at the top of the list of non-quarterbacks talked about going to New York. Missouri's schedule is not good. They have high aspirations. And I'm part of me is worried that like maybe Mizzou might be the team in the SEC set up ready to have a disappointing season. We'll see how Cody Schrader was, how important he was to that offense. But I think Luther Burden III has that ability to be a very, very, very good individual wide receiver that even when the defense knows in this situation they are going to be looking for that guy, he's still able to get open. They're still able to get yards after the catch, whatever the case may be. I like Luther Burden III a lot. I think he's a very, very, very good wide receiver playing with maybe not great quarterback play. And that might be the thing that holds him back. But I have him fifth and final on my list of non-quarterbacks who can win the Heisman Trophy in 2024. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you think I'm crazy, if there's somebody I missed, let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and get that discussion going of who should we be talking about that are the non-quarterbacks, because we can have the discussion of whether it's Quinn Ewers, whether it's Shedeur Sanders, whether it's Carson Beck, whether it's Dylan Gabriel. Those are going to be names that are going to be floated around, but I think it's fun to kind of have that under the radar look. And maybe you've got somebody on the list that I missed. I want to hear from you. Drop them down in the comments below. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. Also, hit the thumbs up button if you like the video. It goes a long way in helping us get in front of more college football fans, and that's always a good thing. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily